Welcome to the Stereoactive Movie Club. My name is Jeremiah, and I'm here with Alicia, Laura, Mia, and Stephen. And we're going to be talking about the 1958 film Vertigo, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. But let's first introduce ourselves. Laura, what have you watched since the last time we recorded?
I watched, it's called Harper, 1966, Paul Newman film. William Goldman wrote it. He wrote All the President's Men. He's a great writer. It was really cool. And it's in Technicolor. So that was really fun. And I also watched Get Carter, the Michael Caine 1971 revenge British crime film that I was amazing and brutal and violent. And I guess the only thing that those two films have in common, aside from being two really hot lead leading men, is that they're part of the neo-noir movement, I guess, on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they were really amazing to watch. I highly recommend both.
Great. And Mia?
So I watched several movies, but I'll just mention two quickly. I watched North by Northwest, which I'd never seen before and fit in well, obviously, with watching Vertigo. And I watched Moulin Rouge, which is one of my favorite movies, and I hadn't seen it in a really long time. So that was a really nice treat.
Yes, I also watched those. And we also watched together False Positive, which I thought was not very good, unfortunately. And then I watched Summer of Soul, that Questlove documentary about the Harlem Cultural Festival, which was, I thought, really excellent. I saw No Sudden Move, the new Soderbergh movie on HBO Max, which was pretty solid. I finally caught up with Kajillionaire. And if you like Miranda July's films, you'll like this movie. I liked it a lot. It kind of snuck up on me. At first, wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I rewatched Star Trek from 2009. I saw Black Widow.
Oh, shit. Okay, wait. Black Widow. How was it?
It was okay. It wasn't like amazing or anything, but it's like all of those Marvel movies, even the lesser Marvel movies, eventually feel like they're building to something and feel like they're sort of elevated by being a part of this bigger thing. So it was fun.
And so it's like elevating things the way they talk about elevating coffee or elevating your snack.
Sure. I'm not sure, but maybe.
Elevated, people use it in advertisements a lot lately, but go on. I'm sorry.
I rewatched Broadcast News. That's a movie. I guess it was only my second time seeing it. I liked it better this time. Still not quite there at the level that other people love that movie these days. We both started to rewatch, or I started to rewatch Punch Drunk Love. She was not enjoying it and was also very tired.
I like made myself fall asleep because I was just like, I can't stand this movie. Oh my God,
Yeah.
What is happening?
I forgot how stressful that movie is.
It was like,
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it too.
Super intense.
I think it just wasn't what I was expecting. Like if I had been like, oh, that's what this is going to be like, I would have been fine. But I thought it was going to be like a cute indie love story. And instead it was like watching Uncut Gems, but like starting it at like 10 o'clock at night last night. And I was just like, I'm not here for this.
Right. I just came from seeing Ron at the Austin Film Society. The Kurosawa movie from the 80s is based on King Lear. And it's really fucking good. It's anytime anybody gets a chance to maybe see that movie on a big screen, I say jump at it because that's the way to see that movie. It's like big and bold and just super impressive. Yeah. And I mean, it's made by a director who at that point was like 40 or 50 years into his career and just like knew how to do everything perfectly well. It's just really impressive. And that's it. Steven, how about you?
That's it.
Sorry.
Just those 50
that's all.
movies.
Yeah. Sorry. It's been a while since we recorded. So.
I know.
Yeah, I watched a bunch of movies, but I'm only going to talk about two that I saw that were new. And it was also two movies that Jeremiah saw, which was Summer of Soul, which I really enjoyed, just because there was a lot of cultural and also historical stuff that was in there that it was really interesting. And it always makes me want to go back and really look at that time period, just because it's just like, it's kind of like a slice of life. And, you know, there's a lot of other things that kind of occur today that also occurred back in that day.
Yeah.
And then I also saw Black Widow. And I did enjoy it. And I did see that in a theater, actually, when I was in New Hampshire visiting my family. And I had the rumble seats and got the huge popcorn. And it was a really enjoyable, like, fun movie. So
Nice.
that's what I saw.
And Alicia.
So the only other movie I watched besides Vertigo was also Summer of Soul, which I also really enjoyed. And yeah, it was moving and just interesting and actually fascinating and sad too, because it was left on the shelf for such a long time and
Yeah.
it really shouldn't have been at all. But yeah, and so that's it. I was in Mexico, so sorry.
How dare you? So for those who may not have listened to the show before, this is a podcast where the five of us are discussing movies that have appeared on Sight and Sound Magazine's poll of the greatest movies ever made that comes out every 10 years. The next poll will be out in 2022, so we're basically using that as our prompt to watch some classic movies ahead of it. And again, this time we're talking about Vertigo. But before we get into the history and background of the movie, what did each of us know about the movie going into this viewing? Who had seen it before? If not, what were you expecting, if anything? And Lora, since you picked this one, why don't you start us off and tell us why you chose it?
I have seen North by Northwest a few times. I've seen Psycho and I've seen Spellbound and I'm To Catch a Thief, but I know that I haven't. Hitchcock he's got like 50 films that I have not seen, and or maybe 47 or something. But I really wanted to watch a Hitchcock film. My expectations, and this is embarrassing, but I'm just going to be honest here. I thought this was Rear Window. I thought there was going to be some paraplegic in a fucking wheelchair with his binoculars. And no, it wasn't that. So that's what I knew. And I was wrong again. And yeah.
What? I think that's fair, though. I mean, it's too like.
I thought Vertigo obviously had vertigo, so he had to sit, maybe saying, like, it all made sense. It all added up in my mind.
Yeah, I think if you haven't seen them, it's easy to not know.
In
which
Lora
is which.
logic.
I think in logic.
Thank you.
So, Stephen, how about you? Had you seen it before, or what were you expecting? Or
yeah, I saw this a long time ago when I took a film class in college, and I really loved it. It's one of my favorite Hitchcock movies. And like Lora, it's funny because like whenever I hear Psycho, I think it's Vertigo. It's really weird, like just because they're really short, I guess the titles.
And they end with O.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to remember when I was looking for the movie to watch, I was like, no, it's not Psycho. It's not Psycho. But I remembered really loving this story and really following it along just because it was it was a linear plot, but yet there was a lot of other things to look at while you were watching it. So I remembered really liking it, but I haven't seen it in over 20 years.
Okay. And Alicia?
Yeah, I've seen this movie a lot of times. I think I even saw it like maybe with you and Mia on the big screen in Chelsea one time.
I think it was just us, me and you.
Oh, maybe just me and
I've
you.
never seen it before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I always really enjoyed it. And I like Hitchcock. And it's funny that you guys mentioned that you thought it was two different movies because I knew which movie it was, but I was mentioning it to my mom on the phone today. And she thought it was like a movie that starred Barbara Stanwyck and Cary Grant and was black and white, which I have no idea. I don't think that movie even exists. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people don't know which movie Vertigo is, which is weird to me, but okay.
Right. And Mia?
I think that should be our question to the Facebook group. Do you know what movie Vertigo is? So I'd never seen this movie before, but Jeremiah has a little poster of it that he's going to tilt up so everyone can see it here. But in the poster, it looks like they're jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. So I just thought that's what the climax was going to be or like her falling off of it, or like that was how she was going to try and kill herself or something. So I kind of kept waiting for that moment. But other than that, I had no expectations other than I was looking forward to watching it because I like Psycho. I like North by Northwest. Obviously, Hitchcock is, a master filmmaker. So yeah, I was looking forward to it and I was not disappointed.
Yeah, I think this is at least my third time seeing it because I remember watching it, I believe, in the late 90s after it had been restored and there was a big push, promotional push as it came out in theaters. I don't think I didn't see it in theaters then. I saw it when it came out on video, but I clearly remember watching Siskel and Ebert and them talking about Vertigo and really talking it up. And that really set my expectations high at the time. And I remember watching the movie and being like, I don't get it. I like there was so much about it I appreciated, but I think I was too young at the time or something because I've since gone back to it. I can't remember if I saw it in between then and when Alicia and I saw it a couple of years ago. Um, I don't think I did, but I remember enjoying it and appreciating it a lot more that time. And I don't think it hurt that we saw it on the big screen. And that's just like a fun experience for old movies sometimes. And yeah, so I went into it knowing that I like it, that my enjoyment of it is increased on subsequent viewings, and expecting the same. And we'll see if it lived up to that. So, as I've often done on the show, I'm going to read from an entry in the Ultimate Encyclopedia of the Movies, which I got when I was in high school and was first getting into movies. As always, the parts that may be more subjective aren't from me personally, but perhaps we can delve into those things as we get into our group discussion. Alfred Hitchcock's marvelously elusive and oblique thriller, Vertigo, is the key work in the director's oeuvre, regarded by many as his most realized picture. A 1990 survey of French critics placed it second, behind Citizen Kane, as the greatest movie ever made. A creation of perfect symmetry and strangeness, it is the closest the master of suspense ever came to an out-and-out art movie. Set in a steeply graded dreamscape San Francisco, Vertigo's vision is subjective to the point of distortion, rooted in the consciousness of Scotty Ferguson, played by James Stewart, haunted by the suicide of a beautiful blonde housewife and obsessively trying to mold a brunette lookalike into a dead woman's image. There's a hypnotic, otherworldly pull to Vertigo that's communicated through a weird blend of ingredients. Bernard Herrmann's moody score, Hitchcock's pioneering use of the disorienting pull-back zoom-in camera shot, and Kim Novak's distant, passively sexual turn as the dual object of Scotty's unhealthy desire. The picture also sees the culmination of Hitchcock's reinvention of Stewart, formerly American cinema's perennial good guy. It's a process that began with Rope in 1948, where the director cast him as a clinical Nietzschean professor, and continued with The Splendid Rear Window in 1954, which found him playing an impotent, compulsive voyeur. With Vertigo, the process is complete, rendering homespun Jimmy unrecognizable as the unstable, unreliable hero figure, sexually obsessed, and a would-be necrophiliac. It's just another indispensable piece to his beguiling abstract puzzle, a Hall of Mirrors movie that demands multiple viewings. Again, that was an entry in the Ultimate Encyclopedia of the Movies. Adapted from a 1954 French novel, whose title translates to From Among the Dead, Vertigo was developed by Hitchcock along with a few different screenwriters before he ended up with a script that suited what he wanted. One of the major storytelling changes from the book to the film is that in the book, the revelation that Judy was part of the plot to do away with Madeline wasn't revealed until the end, whereas in the movie, the audience learns of this 2/3 in. The film premiered in May of 1958. Reviews at the time were mixed, as was audience reception, with the film not performing quite as well as previous Hitchcock films, though the film certainly had its champions even when it was first released. Over time, appreciation for Vertigo has grown and grown, with some pinpointing Robin Wood's book, Hitchcock's Films Revisited, as the beginning of a major boom. Wood wrote in the mid-60s that it was, quote, Hitchcock's masterpiece to date and one of the 4 or 5 most profound and beautiful films the cinema has yet given us. It was restored and re-released for the first time in more than a decade in the early 1980s after Universal Pictures acquired the rights to some of Hitchcock's films from his estate. And there was a major restoration and re-release again in 1996 that included use of more modern techniques to remaster some of the more degraded elements or even re-record some sound effects. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, for Best Art Direction, Set Direction, and Best Sound. Hitchcock was nominated for Outstanding Directorial Achievement by the Directors Guild, and the film was on the lauded French film magazine Cahiers du Cinema's top 10 list for the year. The Village Voice named it the third greatest film of the 20th century in 1999. Also, it ranked number 61 on the AFI 100 Years 100 Movies list in 1998, then jumped to number 9 when they updated their list in 2007. To give a sense of what was popular at the time, Gigi and its director, Vincent Minnelli, won Best Picture and Best Director at the Oscars for 1958, while South Pacific and Auntie Mame were the top 2 grossing movies in North America that year. As for our purposes, Vertigo first appeared on Sight and Sound magazine's critics' poll of the greatest films of all time in 1972, tied as a runner-up at number 12. It's appeared on the list every time since, moving up to number 7, then number 4, then number 2, before in 2012 being named the greatest film of all time, overtaking Citizen Kane from the spot it had held for 60 years. Meanwhile, it had also been named the 6th greatest film on the director's poll in both 1992 and 2002, then came in at number 7 in 2012. So, Lora, since this was your pick, again, why don't you start us off with your thoughts on the film? Did it live up to your expectations of being Rear Window, or not?
I'm listening to everyone's intro and how the film affected them is making me even more nervous. I was so meh about this movie. The fact that you brought up the 2/3 of the way through, we find she writes that letter, that was just, it basically gave you the plot, which is fine. But I mean, here's Jimmy Stewart, older, being nothing but a full-on creep soda for 90% of the film. And it was not what I wanted to watch. I didn't like it at all. And I, wasn't into it. I love Technicolor. I love the greens, and I loved Midge and her brassieres. But yeah, I thought it was really not special. I know.
Yeah.
You're fired.
Alicia, so as you said, you've watched this before, so how was this viewing for you?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I think every time I watch it, I kind of or in between watchings, I kind of my brain sweeps to the side the things that I didn't like about it, and it really glorifies the things that I do like about it. So I'm always I always get taken by surprise sometimes by the things that I don't like. So that happened again this time, because there's a couple of plot holes, and yeah, Jimmy Stewart's character is creepy, and he looks as if he's about 10 years older than Midge, who is supposed to have been in college with him at the same time as him.
At least 10 years older.
Yeah. So those little things did still bother me this time around. But overall, I don't know, for some reason I think it just, despite those little things, it still hangs together really well for me, and I still find it a really compelling movie. I think it's the performances too of Kim Novak and Jimmy Stewart, especially Kim Novak. She's so good in this. So yeah, that's how I felt this time.
Great. And Stephen, how about you on this rewatch?
It held together really well for me. It's not like I really enjoy what's happening on the screen, but it's made so well that it's very watchable, and you care about everybody, even if you don't like them. And that's what I really enjoyed more than anything else, is just seeing how the story kind of unfolded. And I just get frustrated every time with seeing how Judy ends up being treated towards the end. But still, I get sucked in, like Alicia said, every single time. You're like, why are you making such a bad decision? But you sort of understand it, but at the same time, you don't. And that's kind of what the movie is. It's you kind of understand what people are doing, even though they shouldn't be doing it necessarily. And I also really paid more attention to Midge this time around. And I really liked the interplay that she had with Johnny O. And I was really happy to have her as a character, even though sometimes she seemed like she was the exposition, or she was helping to move the plot along. But she was such a good character that I really enjoyed watching her every time. And she did have some agency, and you kind of felt for her at the same time. But overall, yeah, I just loved looking at it. It was like a love letter to San Francisco too. If you didn't want to visit it, then you definitely would after seeing this movie. But yeah, I think it held together really well.
I like the way you described it, Stephen. Like, I like your movie better than.
Mia.
I mean, I feel like I agree with a lot of the points that were made, especially Steven's description was, I think, very apt. I also wanted, or I really liked Midge's character. I wish she was in the movie more. Apparently there was supposed to be a scene at the end of her listening to a radio report, but it got cut, which it would have been nice to like see her one more time. I thought she was great.
I think it's a good edit though, because
I think so too. No,
that was going to be them saying that the husband went to jail for the murder, right? So
yeah, I agree. I thought like the ending shot is just so good that I think it's a good, like, just you're like, wait, what just happened? And then the movie just ends. So I really liked that, but for the purposes of seeing more Midge, I would have liked more. But yeah, I just felt really bad for Judy, like pretty much the whole movie, and especially the last bit when they're at the department store and he's like trying to find the right outfit for her and is making her change her hair and just all of this stuff. It was like very hard to watch. I was having this like really visceral reaction to it. But yeah, I found the movie very compelling. Like I felt like I couldn't turn away from it. I actually watched it twice, which I think is the first time I've done that for any of the movies that we've watched for this so far. I mean, it helps that it's not like 3 hours long or anything. So, and it definitely, like, it made me be like, oh, San Francisco, what a beautiful city. Would love to go back there sometime soon. Yeah, I found it not necessarily the easiest watch, but something that I couldn't look away from. And I think the themes of like obsession and, you know, the lengths we're willing to go through for someone that we love. Although I don't know if anyone actually loved really anyone in this movie. I guess I don't know. Just like, even though this movie took it to such an extreme, it made me think about past relationships when I felt like, oh, I need to change something about myself, or I need to be this or like that, or, oh, I wish this other person would change in this way, like then everything would be perfect. And obviously this is like that times 1,000, but I think there's a level there that like anyone can resonate with.
Yeah, I enjoyed it even more this time than I did last time. I feel like it is a movie that every time you watch it, there's just more to kind of grab hold of, because you can sort of like, kind of along the lines of what I think Alicia was saying in a way, that you can sort of set aside some things and just kind of pay attention to it in a different way. I don't think that's exactly what you were saying, Alicia, but I think it benefits the film. Like, I think that it's easier to sort of let go of what you think it's supposed to be, or what you thought of it as you were watching it that first time, and sort of like let it wash over you. And I think there's more to take in. It's a movie that has plenty of text, but so much subtext that it's hard to get it all on the first or even second watch. And I feel like this is the first time where I understood the status it's achieved at this point in its history. And I'm not sure if I would say it's the greatest movie ever made. It's hard to judge that, like it's not my favorite movie of all time, but it's pushing up the list for me, like where I understand the conversation around it, and I'm not down on it, So I wanted to bring up something that we kind of talked about in the run up to this conversation via email amongst ourselves, of whether this is a doppelganger movie, because Laura, you brought that up, and I sort of like, I don't want to say I shot it down, but like I was like, is it a doppelganger movie? And I guess like it plays on tropes of that, whether it is one or not, and it just sort of depends on like what is a doppelganger movie. Like
I think that's the question.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all just sort of playing on the trope of it, and it's whether you buy it or not. And of course, this film for me, I didn't buy it.
Right. So why is that, do you think?
If you could say. I mean, she has such a distinctive face. Like, it's just, give me a fucking break. Kim Novak.
Sure. Yeah.
She's a brunette.
I thought that
Those
she's,
two blonde.
but I think her performance, I think she does a good job
She
of
does a
playing
great job.
playing
She
it
does
like
an
it's two
amazing job.
characters, and like
The problem is that letter scene kind of gives
Mhm.
it all away. I think if we all just kind of hung out and watched her perform, I think it would have had a lot more of a impact for me at the end.
Okay.
I think it's a doppelganger movie for like 5 minutes when you're not sure either, when you're kind of in the same boat as Jimmy Stewart and you're also like not sure like is this the same person, and is the mystery part of this movie really over, or
Mhm.
what's about to happen here, when you're like not sure. I do think the letter scene like does it a disservice. Like I agree with you. In my mind, whenever I think about the movie, my mind always puts the letter scene at the end. I always think I always think it happens at the end, and I'm always surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, this is in the middle of the movie. It reveals like this like
Everything.
super important twist.
But I feel like
I
the letter
disagree.
didn't reveal anything that you don't already know from the flashback that she just had. That's where
Yeah,
the big
but-
reveal is.
Yeah.
So the letter to
Yeah.
me is more just like, oh yeah, okay, so she was actually in love with him. She
Mhm.
wasn't just pretending to be, which I think could have been revealed through the rest of the movie.
I think
Yeah.
I think I conflate the two things in my mind. Like when I say the letter scene, I mean the
Okay.
letter and the flashback together
Okay.
in one
Mhm.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that what he's doing there plays with like his bigger theory or
Hitchcock's.
yeah, Hitchcock's bigger theory of suspense and how suspense works. Like he describes it as he's told this story using a bomb during a conversation where there's two people sitting at a table, and if you watch them in a movie and they're just having a conversation and then suddenly there's an explosion, there's absolutely no suspense if you didn't know there was a bomb there. But if you show the audience that there's a bomb under the table, then it becomes about like when or are the characters going to realize there's a bomb under the table because you know it. And so there's suspense there in that. And to me, that's what the revelation does, is because then it becomes about Scotty. Like, is he going to realize what's happening? Because you know.
I think that I like that analogy, but I also think we all knew there was a bomb under the table without that happening. Like, I don't think that I knew
I
that.
didn't.
Yeah, I don't know if we would have either.
I did.
The first time I saw it, I didn't know until
Mhm.
I was just like, oh, what's this? And then yeah, and there's like, oh, I do think it. Although I said it does a disservice, I do think it is more compelling to watch Judy and know like how tormented she probably really
Exactly.
is.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that
Um,
up too. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Stephen. I know you.
Oh
were
no,
gonna say
no,
something.
no. It was just like we got a sense of why where her motivation was, like you said, Alicia. It was just sort of like, how far is she really going to go for this relationship? And so I felt like that was kind of like the twist of it, was just like, is she going to go as far as, completely turning into this woman who she really is,
Mhm.
or not really is, but how she's acting.
Right.
Right. And the fact to me that she like rips up the letter, like obviously if she had just told him like at dinner that night, like, hey, by the way, crazy story, but like, who knows how he would have reacted, but like, would she have wound up thrown off of a tower, or not thrown, but either fallen or jumped? In my opinion, the jury is out, off of the tower? Probably not. You know what I mean? So, but the fact that she doesn't tell him, obviously, then okay, the rest of the movie is going to be this tension here.
Yeah, and I think that knowing where she is at with this, like as an audience member, kind of frees up the filmmaking in a way to sort of like focus on different things than you could if you didn't do that. And I think it makes it much more interesting. It's not just about the plot anymore. It's about emotions and interactions in a way that you can kind of disconnect it from standard plotting, because it is in a way disconnected from that just in the face of it. But Laura, I'm curious, you said that you knew anyway, so what tipped it for you?
I mean, I just think she just has such a specific face, and it was all done. I mean, it was such a stylized and effective way that they fell in love so quickly
Mm-hmm.
that, of course, it was her. Why should I mean, how do people like, they looked exactly the same?
See, I thought they looked,
Their
I
hair
actually
just
had to,
shades.
I had to like do the
down.
Amazon X-ray thing. So I was like, wait, is that her? Like I thought they were so, and the fact that she doesn't, her eyes don't light up at all when she opens the door and sees that it's him. Like that to
Exactly.
me, I mean, obviously like she's, Kim Novak is an incredible actress and like, she needed to land that because if there was even a spark of recognition, then you'd know like, okay, game's over right here and he would know. But just like her eyes are just so flat and like her attitude is just so like, who the hell is this man standing at my door? And I was like, oh my God, to see the person who you fell in love with that you thought you'd never see again, they've shown up at your door just to like nail that so well. I was really like, okay, no, this can't be
Judy
her.
deserves the Oscar.
She does,
Yeah.
honestly.
Right.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
But I also think that's where it plays on the whole doppelganger thing, is because that's a trope of movies that you'll have an actor play two characters and that there's a mix up about identity. And I think that that's at first, if I remember correctly, watching it 20 something years ago, that's what I thought was going on, is that this one actor was playing two parts. And I didn't know until they revealed it that that wasn't the case. And I think I might have still been fucking confused because I was, like 17 or something and just didn't know what the hell was happening. But
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily having one actor in those roles, even if you recognize them, gives it away, like in a way that is like foregone. Like I understand that you could be like, you could suspect that, you could really think that that's the case, but there's still like the movie could have gone in a different direction.
It could have, except for the letter scene.
Well, sure. At that point, they've already revealed it, though.
Right.
Yeah, the flashback letter scene,
Right,
I think is
yeah,
what we
sure.
should call it for, because I'm assuming that's what you have the same thing as Leisha, right? It's like those two things back to back. Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to add to the doppelganger part. It made me think, just was Judy actually a doppelganger of Barbara or Madeline, or was it the other way around? Because we don't really know what Madeline was really like. We just get what her husband said about it.
Right.
So it could have been she was just acting like herself, but just a little bit more to make him fall in love with her. So, I mean, what she was even trying to get at was like, I'm the same person, but you're just not seeing it because I don't look like this other person.
Yeah, the only glimpse we get of Madeline, the real Madeline, is a dummy being thrown out a window that's supposed to be a real person in the world of the movie, but is clearly a dummy when you're watching the movie.
I do think there's a couple things that questions that brings up. I mean, for me, it was like, what do you really love about a person? Is it just like what they look like, or what is he obsessing over specifically about Madeline? Is it like the mystery of her? Is it her look? I mean, I guess it's everything about her, but then that is Judy too.
Mhm.
So there has to be something there. It's that, for me, that's why you can kind of understand why she's like willing to kind of go to these lengths for him, because their connection was like so instant and so like intense. And of course, like you want that feeling to like last as long as you can make it last.
Right.
But and then the other thing I was gonna say, I has totally gone out of my head, so maybe it'll come back later.
Yeah, like she says, she could have gotten away scot-free and not even, entertain the idea of going out with him, because he really didn't have anything on her.
I like
But
that
she
you
really
said
did love him.
scot-free.
Yeah. I noticed that.
Scotty.
Oh, yeah.
I think also this whole movie can be read and has been read as a metaphor for Hitchcock specifically as a director, and directors and filmmakers overall, as like Hitchcock was someone who liked to cast beautiful women in roles, and then if they weren't blonde, make them dye their hair blonde, and then he would bully them into doing his bidding, to the point that sometimes he ruined their careers in the end. That happened to Tippi Hedren most famously, maybe. And so this is almost a confession of Hitchcock, if you take the movie to be his story in a way. That connects to auteurism and the whole auteur theory of like a movie really like revealing the filmmaker in a way, and just like these subconscious leanings that come through in it. I think, interestingly, with this movie, the reception of the movie at the time almost undercuts the whole idea of the auteur theory, because he did nothing, it sounds like, but second guess every decision he made about this movie for years, or maybe until he died. because it just didn't achieve what he hoped it would in terms of critical or box office success. So he went down saying like Jimmy Stewart was too old, I shouldn't have cast him. I think that that Kim Novak didn't do a great job and blah blah blah. He made every excuse about it. So if it's an auteur's medium, a director's medium, and then he's like, oh, all my choices were poor, he's sort of undercutting the idea of it, and then it goes on to become the greatest film of all time by some polls, at least. And it's just like, I don't know, everything is contradicting everything else in that or something.
Have you guys seen the movie Hitchcock with Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah.
The making of Psycho.
Yeah,
I have not. No.
it's okay.
It was not it was sort of heavy-handed film, but it also showed that he's a very tortured director, that his wife helped, step in a lot during the making of these films. So I could see him second guessing choices because he might not have been emotionally or mentally stable enough at those times I wasn't there, but
Right.
The Psycho didn't look like it was all, it seems like it takes a village, I guess. And yes, Jimmy Stewart was too old for this part. I think he was miscast 100%. But for me, that was my take on it. But everyone else, a lot of people, obviously, for it to be ranking as to beat out Citizen Kane as one of the greatest films of all time, I'm in a minority here.
I thought he was really good in it, but I think it bothered me just like as a plot issue, which can we talk about plot holes after we're done with this? Because I really, there's so many.
Yes,
and
that was the thing that I forgot. So yes.
Yeah, I definitely think that like his age, it wasn't until the second time I watched it that I picked up on like the mid-college engage. I mean, I'd heard it, but it just like didn't really register as like wait a second, like how old were both of you? Like, I mean, maybe he was in law school because they mentioned him being a lawyer, and maybe she was a freshman. So I was like,
does that count as a pothole though, as much as just kind of?
Yeah,
I think so.
Because he could be playing a character that's 30. He just doesn't look 30, and it's unrealistic.
The other guy went to college with them too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who also is like
looks-
1,000 years old.
Yeah, I mean, same thing.
Maybe Midge is a child prodigy. I mean, she's amazing.
I don't think they're supposed to be 30.
Maybe they didn't go right to school. Maybe they didn't go right to college.
True. Was there a war? There
They
could have
took
been
a
war.
decade long. They took
I
a
agree that
decade.
he's not supposed to be 30.
A
I'm just saying
Rumspringa.
they could say he's supposed to be 6, and it would just be like a bad decision of
Okay, so
casting.
that's my number one plot hole. My number two is how the fuck did he get off the roof in the very beginning? He's like hanging there. Like, I assumed like I think the first time I watched it, and it's probably like ridiculous, just the fact that he clearly had like some sort of like broken ribs or like injuries in his internal body. I was like, maybe they put like a trampoline or something or like a big parachute and they caught him somehow, because like I just don't see how anyone would be able to go and
That's
get
why I thought he
him.
ended up in a wheelchair.
There you
Yeah.
go. I know there's more, but I'm just gonna leave it with like those two, and then Alicia, I know you're wanting to talk, so
Well, the thing that I had forgotten earlier was when Stephen asked about how similar were the real Madeline and Judy as Madeline. Is that watching it this time, I realized like, how is it possible that Jimmy Stewart never sees a photograph of what the real Madeline looked like? Because
he saw her at the restaurant.
well, no, he didn't see her at the restaurant.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, but
he sees her profile.
No,
No, that
wasn't
was Kim
Madeline.
Novak.
That was
It was
Judy.
Madeline, but I mean, his
He
friend
never
from
sees the
college.
real Madeline.
No,
he
I
never
know,
sees
but his
the
friend
real-
from college tells him come see
Yeah.
my wife at this
No, I
thing, so he
know.
doesn't need to see a
Yeah,
photograph.
Yeah. It was
So
part
you're
of
saying the plot hole is that he never asks to see a
Egg.
photo.
It's not even that. It's that when she dies, this is like a prominent citizen and she
True.
dies in this crazy way. And there's no picture of her in the newspaper, in an obituary or at a memorial service or anything.
I know,
and,
it's
like-
like, where was Facebook back then?
I also liked
I'm not saying that, but
No, I completely agree with you. I was just making a joke.
on her gravestone. It just says Madeline, wife of whatever his name. There's no dates. There's nothing, and I was like, oh my god, this poor woman. One
Well-
more indignity.
Okay, so supposedly he is essentially catatonic for a year living in this home. So he doesn't know what's
Yeah,
going
that was
on in the
another
world. He missed the obituary. Okay,
He didn't miss the inquest. He didn't miss the.
that's true. That is true.
coroner's
You're right. You're right.
inquest.
Mr.
So
Redbird.
the
He got
other
where he got like
explanation.
severely dressed down.
There are people who think that the entire movie is in his head and he's just hanging on that ledge. None of it
The whole
happens
time.
after that.
And what he
I
dies?
would be into that movie.
I don't know.
Because this one bothered me a lot.
So in that case, there can be no plot holes. It's all just dream logic.
Yeah, but we don't.
Mhm.
That's not what's presented to us, as Laura once famously said. That's not what we're
Famously.
shown.
If you want to really take it back, we are watching a movie. So. These aren't real people.
So I do want to address the Jimmy Stewart casting though, because to me, like, I totally disagree. I understand what you're saying about the age and the difference in age between him and her. I think it is odd. I think the brilliance of casting him though is that he is that do-good guy that you know from so many other movies, but then he's playing like this dark character, and I think the movie gets away with so much because of the Jimmy Stewart personality in public that you give him a lot of benefit of the doubt and stick with him through this crazy obsessive journey that he goes on, if you stick with him at all, which not everybody does, obviously. But I think the success of the movie for anyone who enjoys it so much hinges on it being Jimmy Stewart and him as a person who playing this role. And that's something that Hitchcock did so much of like casting people because of their public persona and then playing off of that. So I think that it really elevates, to use the word again, the movie here. I understand what you're saying though about the whole age difference thing. It is, but I just chalk that up to that's what they did in movies then. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's great.
They should have just aged them all up.
Sure.
Just age everybody else up.
Or just age him
Yeah.
down. Didn't Martin Scorsese do that in The Irishman? Didn't
Yes,
he?
yes. Yes, they should have
Very-
used the CGI they had.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
fulfilling.
Just more
Needed
whatever makeup that they had on Kim Novak to make her look so luminous. Just like put that on Jimmy Stewart.
It didn't bother me the age thing as much as just Jimmy Stewart being Jimmy Stewart as a complete, total creep soda.
Mhm.
I didn't really want to watch that, like, I mean, you
That's what
want
I
to have
wanna
sympathy
watch.
and then he just gets worse and worse and worse. And it was hard to have sympathy for any of them at the end.
Well, I think you're kind of proving my point then, Laura, because I want to watch Jimmy Stewart be a creep soda. And so that's why the movie is successful to me. And you don't want to watch it, so that's why it doesn't work for you. So that casting is very important. Alicia, what do you think?
I didn't mind Jimmy Stewart. I love Jimmy Stewart and I like him in this. And I agree. I think like they should have probably just hired or done something to make Barbara Bel Geddes look more around the same age as Jimmy Stewart and the other guy. I didn't have I also like enjoy watching Jimmy Stewart in anything. I think like as much as you're right, like he does play a guy who increasingly like just becomes like this insane creep weirdo by the end of the movie. At the beginning, you kind of need to like really like this guy, I think, in order to like follow him on this crazy journey and kind of, I don't know, for me, like it worked for me, Jimmy Stewart being the lead. I just think like maybe Barbara Bel Geddes, no disrespect to her, but maybe she wasn't the right choice or the right age
She
for
was
me.
so great.
Yeah.
I like her very much. It's just it's just like when you think about it, when you've seen it several times and you start to notice things, you're like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
wait.
I've only seen it once. So
Yeah.
I saw it. This is the third time I've seen it. And I would have liked to have maybe Midge be older, but they had such good chemistry. And you could tell at the beginning, that's what helps you get on his side is seeing their relationship. And you realize he's friends with this woman that he was engaged to, and they have like such an easy chemistry and they trust each other. But, it kind of helps the movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the other thing that really bothered me is the catatonic part. I mean, so many films do it and it always just bothers, the bad ones do it. Like Basic Instinct 2 at the end, he becomes catatonic, or that other movie with Rami Malek and Denzel Washington that just came out. At the end, he becomes catatonic because it's when there's nothing else to really do. Get catatonic, let's all get catatonic, guys. It's a new dance craze.
Did he become catatonic at the end of that movie? Rami Malek.
Yeah, he does.
I don't remember that. at
Spoiler
all.
alert, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry.
For people who haven't seen this movie.
Oops.
I'm not gonna watch it, so
Oh, me neither, but
I didn't like it. It wasn't a good
It
movie.
wasn't good, but I mean, it just, bothers me.
well.
Stephen, according to
guess-
Netflix, every person in America saw that movie, so no spoilers.
the catatonic scene to me, the thing that I took away from it, besides my favorite line of the movie that I will share when we do our favorite scene later, was because kind of the first time I watched it, I was like, so is Midge still in love with him? Is that what we're supposed to think here?
Mhm.
Yeah, I came down on the side of yes. But then when he's
Oh, yeah.
catatonic and she's taking care of him, she's like, says like, basically like, don't worry anymore, mother's here. And I was like,
That's what they called each other back then.
I guess
A little bit of
so.
psycho.
No, there was a lot of
overlap.
Right.
mother, father thing. All the Marilyn Monroe movies, she calls them daddy.
Yeah. It
Totally a
just, I was
thing.
like, sweetie, if
Disgusting.
you ever want him to fall in love with
Not
you,
that
if he
bad. You
comes
guys
out
should
from
just
his
try it.
coma.
Let me know.
Zaddy.
Let's
Um,
table that.
So, Laura, you had a question for us, I think based on your like or dislike of the movie. I'm just going to say you pretty well telegraphed your opinion about the
Yeah,
movie to all
I
of us in
just-
advance with this. But
I really feel like if without that letter scene, this film would have been a lot more compelling for me.
Yeah.
Where they didn't just give you the entire plot twist.
okay.
Well, what's the question for the
yeah.
people?
Oh, I'm sorry. My question was if there was one thing that you could change about this movie, one thing to make it exactly what you wanted, what would it be? And the answer could be nothing
hmm
because Jeremiah loves it.
No, I would. Okay,
He wants to marry it.
I would say I think that they should better clarify the age range of those two characters in relation to each other. I agree with you, but I want to keep the Jimmy Stewart casting. I agree that they should have aged her up to meet him. I think that would solve that for me, and I'd be happy.
Cool. I want to hear what Steven says because Steven really likes this movie and I can tell I'm annoying him.
You're not annoying me. I just think it's
A
funny.
little bit.
But I actually do agree with you about the letter. I didn't think
Oh,
it was
cool.
necessary. I felt like I could have figured it out on my own. But as we were talking about it, it is true. We get to see what the motivation is with Judy. And that's the only reason why I think the letter was necessary. Because other than that, I would have just thought that why would she be so lovesick that she would want to be with this guy? So, but I don't think it was necessary for it. And I think the climax would have been completely different when you find out everything at the end. It would have been more like a murder mystery almost than it was. It was sort of like that other movie that we saw that it reminded me of where the characters, like it wasn't necessarily about the murder. It was about like what happened afterwards.
La Ventura.
La Ventura.
La
Yeah,
Ventura.
I was thinking
Yeah.
of that too. Yeah.
I had two things. So, one, I would actually add on to the flashback letter scene because to me, it was interesting that they never talked about how Judy and what the heck was the dude's name? Madeline's husband?
Gavin.
Elster?
Gavin.
Yes,
Yeah.
Gavin
exactly.
Elster, yeah.
How they met, how they fell in love. Like, she must have really loved him to be like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll go along with this insane plot for you to kill your wife. Or he must have given her a ton of money. Why is she still living in this kind of dumpy hotel then? I felt like there needed to be something there. So I wish that the flashback had almost started with like her being swept off her feet by him and like how just it didn't have to be long, just like a couple scenes of like just explaining that. Cause I just thought, and then also he's like, okay, I'm leaving forever and like is obviously gonna like flee the country just in case she does talk or stuff goes sideways. So I just thought that like, what is her original motivation? Love or money or both of them? And it just doesn't.
That's a really good
Yeah.
plot
Mhm.
hole.
Yeah.
Well, I have something to add to that. It kind of makes me think that Jimmy Stewart's character, when he saw her in the street, it mirrored what happened with Gavin. I feel like it was, he saw an opportunity and then he kind of tried to, make her
Yeah.
into something that he wanted, although it was for money, and promised her all this stuff. And it sounded like, once she was done, it was over. But she kind of fell into that. And so she has a pattern of kind of doing that because the same thing happened with Jimmy Stewart's character.
Yeah. That would make sense for sure.
Wait, I have a question about this. I can't remember for certain now. they do say in there that they had a romantic thing, her and
No.
Gavin, or
No,
'cause
but
that
there
sounds
was
like
the whole
what-
line, did he train you? And
Yeah.
she nods. So
Maybe
I
it
think
was
there's
just-
a connotation.
But isn't that
between-
what you were saying?
I guess I just assumed it was based on stuff that I was reading
Mm.
later, where they say one thing that I saw noted was like Judy was his mistress, and then he threw her away in the same way that the Carlotta character,
Mhm.
I mean, probably completely made up story. So I guess there's not really that, but in the same way that she was thrown away. So I guess I just assumed that either they were in a genuine relationship and then it just worked out, because we never really see the wife, like how much do they really look alike and stuff.
Mhm.
Or yeah, maybe your theory seems totally plausible, Stephen, that he saw her and was like, oh, you're the person that I can manipulate to get my wife knocked off. But it just seems to me like Judy seemed young, willing to please, like someone who could have been swept up in things really easily. So I was just curious. Like, she says that he gave her money,
Mhm.
but like,
A
I don't know,
little,
someone would have to give
yeah.
me a lot of money to get me
I
involved
really
in
like
something
that
like that.
you said knocked off. That sounded tough.
My other thing that bothered me, this is more minor, but when they're doing that like quasi trial that they do of his, it's
Oh.
at the mission. And I was just like, what the heck? Like, trials have to be at the scene of the crime. It's not like in a courthouse or something like that. Just
think
that
that's
whole
an-
thing really bothered me. I'm just like, why is this? I
That
understand
was
why
my favorite scene.
I think that's an inquest. That's like a coroner's inquest. It's not a trial where they're just trying to determine like manner of death. And I don't know. Maybe the like government building is like right across the street from the mission or something.
they're in the same like thing. Because at first, the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it is just like a similar looking like Spanish style architecture building. But then I'm like, oh no, they're freaking there. Like, there's the stables thing right there. Sure, maybe if it is a coroner's inquest, I don't know anything about those. So then was the judge dude? Was he the coroner?
They just do it to figure out the manner of death.
Is
Like,
there a
not every
jury?
place does it. What?
Is there
No.
normally a jury?
Oh yeah, there wasn't.
No,
movie,
no.
Wasn't there?
Was there a jury? Well, I think
Yeah.
I think it's just people. Oh, that's true. They did.
No,
have,
and they're like,
maybe-
here's our verdict. Like 2 seconds later, they don't even go into
maybe
another room.
sometimes they do have. Maybe sometimes they do have juries, but it's just a thing to determine like if you need to further investigate the death or not. So like if the jury or the coroner comes back and says this seems to have been homicide, or it's
Right.
or it's still mysterious and like you still need to investigate, or they might come back with like suicide or accident or whatever.
So it's akin to a grand jury.
Sort of, yeah. It's very common in Great Britain. So
That's how
it's
you
in
know.
like every mystery novel by Agatha Christie, there's an
Right.
inquest. So I had to like research that.
I just chalked up the location to like movie logic and like, okay, maybe they were like, you know what? We rented out this place for 2 weeks and it only took us 11 days to shoot the other scene. So let's just do it here. Why not? Rather than like have to like go to a fake courthouse or something. But I was just like, wait, why are they there? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, they probably shot that on a soundstage.
Whatever. And like the nuns are there. I don't know. It just didn't seem like something
Those
that would really
bitches.
happen. I know.
I thought they were witnesses.
Yeah, there were witnesses. That's probably why they would
Yeah.
be there.
Which also then, I guess we can talk about this later. I want to talk about like the very ending.
No, let's do it. Well, no, Alicia,
Well,
Alicia
yeah,
didn't get
yeah,
to say
yeah.
her thing, did she?
No, there is another plot hole in that whole thing to me. Like, how did Gavin Elster and Judy get out of the tower without anybody and away from the mission without anybody seeing them before like the police arrived after? Like, how did they get out?
The back staircase.
Was there a back staircase?
No.
So, like,
I
I
assume
thought they just
just
waited
hid.
until everybody left and they like hid
but
somewhere.
the police should have gone up there. The police
Not
should have
immediately.
gone up.
No.
They said in there, I'm not saying it makes sense, but they do say that they escaped before the police showed up and looked over the whole place.
Oh, they must have ran. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, okay.
Well,
I
There was
don't
a lot of
understand how they
crazy
got
stuff
past
happening.
Jimmy Stewart though, because he's like collapsed.
No,
on the
because he
stairs.
leaves.
I
He
thought- wasn't he-
leaves. No,
Yeah,
they
he
show
does
him.
leave.
Blacked
Right.
out.
does.
I think they'd mentioned during the inquest that he ended up at his apartment and he didn't stick around. So he was
Right.
probably like not paying attention to anything at that point. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said he blacked
Okay.
out. But they show him when the nuns and
Mhm.
someone else are getting the ladder and going up to the
Mhm.
body. They show him exiting stage left. Or
that was a great scene, by the way. I loved watching that. It's cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
So the thing I was actually going to change though is the Midge stuff. Not, I wouldn't remove it because I think she's an important character, but I hate like how I hate how Hitchcock has her be this kind of like, she's cool, but she's also a little bit like pathetic.
Go
And
for her.
like, yeah, I'm like, why?
Stupid Midge.
Yeah,
Stupid
yes,
Midge.
that whole scene I
That scene
hate,
made
and where
me
she
so
shows up at his
sad.
house and she's like watching Kim Novak leave, and she's kind of spying on him. I'm like, why is this happening? I just don't like that. And I don't like, I guess we see Judy as this sort of character that's from like this lower socioeconomic status. And then you have Madeline, or Judy as Madeline, is this woman that's like very wealthy and put together and beautiful, but obviously like mysterious or whatever. And then you have Midge, who's just like this normal person, but she's portrayed in this like ridiculous, like pathetic way.
Mhm.
I just don't like that. Like I would have given her a little more, like give her a boyfriend or a husband or something. They could still be friends.
Throw her a
you know?
bone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Literally.
like,
She's like the Philip Seymour Hoffman of Boogie Nights of her day.
Oh.
She's just like, I'm a fucking idiot.
yeah,
I
don't
know. The
just
scene with the painting was really hard. I kind of forgot about that while we've been talking about this. But yeah, I was just like,
Yeah,
oh my God, girl, why did you just do that? Like, no.
It's too soon.
Yeah, then she's supposed to be like the smart, like
Yeah.
a smart middle class, like she has like a career. She's supposed to be like this career woman, and yet she's like a complete idiot when it comes
She's
to
lacking because she just doesn't have his love.
Mm.
yeah.
And if she would just take off her glasses, she would look just like Kim
Exactly.
Novak.
It would be
so...
like, yeah.
You get out of those sweaters, you know.
Oh, the
Yeah.
sweaters.
Seriously, put on a bustier, sweetie.
I know, honey.
Put that bra on.
You wanted to talk about the ending?
Yeah. Well, just like obviously the last like 10 minutes is so intense. You know what's coming. He sees the necklace. He drives her out there. She must have this, she looks at the sky like she did when she was Madeline and is like, oh shit, like, are we going to this place again? She's obviously terrified. And then in like a total reversal of him trying to grab Madeline and pull her back, he's basically like dragging her up the stairs, which was also just like really hard to watch. Just like, oh my God. I did read too an earlier, and one of the endings that was tossed around, I don't know how far in the process this went, he was actually going to strangle her in the tower. And so like then once I knew that and I rewatched it, like there's definitely some scenes where like he has his hands on her throat, and anyways, it was just all like really intense. And then she, they get up there. Okay, seems like maybe he's not going to throw her off the tower, which I was sort of like, is he going to do that? Or is he going to like snap to his senses once they get up there and he's actually at the point? And then this scary nun lady walks up and Judy freaks out and either jumps or falls out of the window. So I was curious what people thought. Like, does she jump because she thinks it's Madeline's ghost come back to haunt her, or someone else who's coming to get her or something? Or does she just step backwards and fall? What did y'all think?
I think she fell.
I also thought she just fell. She was startled by the nun.
Yeah. Well, it looked like there was a second where it was like a misshapen figure and it looked like almost like death or whatever. And I think she was just like freaked out over that. And I think she fell.
I think this question starts earlier. Why do you think she wore that necklace?
Right.
Because obviously
She
this
wanted
is
to
like
give up the game.
she won. I think that some part of her,
She wanted to get caught?
I think she didn't want to have to pretend to be Madeline anymore. I think she wanted to be able to be herself. And she's like in this tormented relationship where this man, she loves him. He doesn't really love her. He loves some idea he has of her as a different person. And she's all tied into that as being like partially responsible for the death of that person. I think like, I do think that maybe some part of her was like, this has to end.
This has to end. Yeah.
Well, I think that
Certainly did.
I think this is why maybe the letter itself, I don't mean the revelation that she's in on the plot and that or anything. I mean the letter where she says that she's in love with him actually, and then she rips it up. I think that's how that becomes important in a way, because that's setting up that she wants to tell him, setting up that she knows that she has those feelings, makes it make more sense potentially that she wants to give away what's going on to him without having to say it, because she can't get up the courage to actually say it.
It seemed like at the end also, like he seemed to be turning a little bit towards her. Like when she was trying to explain what happened, just the expression on his face, I think he sort of was coming around.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's why I feel like she was pushed. She wasn't pushed,
She
I mean,
fell.
she just fell.
I don't think he pushed her. I think she jumped though. I think she
But he
jumped.
is responsible for all that he didn't push her. His
Yeah.
whole little theatrics.
He
like,
had 3. I'm sorry. This movie's supposed to be like what, the span of like a year and change or something, and this man has been around 3 people who have all jumped or fallen to their deaths. Like, a little suspicious, if I say so.
Well, he should have gotten that vertigo taken care of as soon as he could.
He did.
have you guys ever seen the
Well-
movie High Anxiety by Mel Brooks? Sort of like a takeoff of it.
No.
I liked
Sorry.
it better.
Wait, so did you see that before you saw this? So how much was given away by that for
Oh,
you?
Not
yeah,
much.
maybe that's
it's
why-
different. It's
It
totally
is?
different.
Because that's a take on all of Hitchcock's movies, right?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's
Oh, I want to
it's
watch
rid-
that.
like
now.
the airplane version of Hitchcock.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
I think that is a really good point too, Alicia. I hadn't thought about that. I was
Yeah.
just kind of like, did she forget? Did she
That
thinks
always
he's gonna
bothers me.
forget? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, it always bothered me. I'm like, how could you even keep that necklace in your
know.
house?
Well,
Right.
and I kind of
Like-
actually thought that when I thought stuff was going to be revealed because she has the gray suit, hanging in her closet. And when he, and I assume other clothes too. And when she's getting her hair colored and he's like, oh, tell her I'll wait at her apartment or at her hotel room, I was like, oh shit, like what is he going to find? Is he going to find the ripped up letter? Because it seemed like it had only been a few days or something. Like, is he going to throw something in the trash and see a little scrap of paper and tape a note together or something like that? So
Yeah, I wondered that too. But how funny was it all the times that he's like taking her around to like get just the right suit and get her hair like just the right color, and the women that work at the stores are all like, "We know what you want." Like,
Or that he
"We
says,
get
Sunny?
it."
you couldn't care about this. Like,
I
Oh,
know.
I
I was like, what?
you don't care what color your hair is, do
Yeah.
you, woman? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It can't possibly matter to you
Yeah, it
why I
can't.
like
No.
you or the things I like about you.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, it's
that
very
I wouldn't say
disturbing.
funny.
Well, not that, but like
Yeah.
I thought the sales clerks and the like women at the beauty salon were funny because they were like, "We know what you want."
Yeah.
Well, I
Like,
wonder
detectives
with
are-
those sales clerks, especially at the department store, were they the same ones that, a year earlier,
Yeah,
the suit,
true.
that too.
Oh,
like
my-
literally the same woman? They're like, you look familiar.
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like
maybe.
that inspired Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, except it was another guy and he was a shipping magnate, right? And then he was telling them like, but you need to dye your hair like this. Yeah.
So, bringing it back to the ending, apparently this is the only movie of Hitchcock's where the killer gets away with it in the end. Gavin does. I think usually they weren't allowed to do that because of the codes about morality that they put on the stuff if you wanted to put your movie out in America. But my only argument with that is I think the birds get away with it in The Birds. But otherwise, yeah, I do find it interesting that this is maybe the only other one where the killer gets away.
Well, I'm glad they don't have the scene of Midge was listening to the radio and hearing about how he was caught in Europe. And I'm glad they didn't do that because I
Yeah.
think it's just like such an iconic ending of him like standing on the edge of that window looking down and then it just ending. Like I imagined being in a movie theater when this movie came out and everyone just being like, oh shit, oh my God, like that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Much
Yeah.
better.
It was kind of like the Magnificent Ambersons.
Yeah.
Yes.
That you were just tacked on. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
And we caught the guy.
and it's also just very indicative of Hitchcock's way of ending movies. It's like, this movie is over, we're out. It's not like Spielberg where there's like 5 endings in a row. It's just like no denouement or what at all. It's just the plot is wrapped up, the movie is over. Get the fuck out of the theater, please. I love it.
Well, it starts with his first episode of Vertigo, and then at the end he can look down out the window. He doesn't have vertigo anymore.
Right.
Problem solved.
I like
Happy
that.
ending.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Only 3 people had to die on the way.
Collateral damage.
Exactly.
But no, I agree. I don't think that they needed that scene at all. Like,
Do you guys know that Hitchcock had a fear of eggs?
oh,
He had like a super phobia.
Because he looks like an egg.
Humpty Dumpty.
So what was everyone's favorite scene or moment or something else about the movie?
Mr. Roper.
So just for everybody at home, she's referring to the coroner or whoever was at the head of that inquest as Alicia laid it out for us. Apparently he looked like Mr. Roper. So is that your answer, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay.
oh no.
Alicia, what was your favorite element of the movie?
I like the Muir Woods sequence when they're looking at the sequoias and they're looking at the age of the tree. And I don't know, I just like the whole San Francisco, Northern California-ness of it all. I mean, I find something different. That's my favorite every time, but that was my favorite this time. I felt like that scene was really haunting and creepy, and I don't know, it got me this time.
Mia?
So my favorite scene is right before Madeline jumps when they're embracing in like the lawn area before she runs into the church, because I thought, she's like saying like, if you love me, then you'll never see me again, or like something along those lines. And the first time I watched it, obviously I didn't know what the secret plot was and stuff. So I thought it worked really well there. But then when you know and you rewatch it again, it also works really well. So I just thought that was good. And then my favorite line from the movie is when he's in the sanatorium and Midge goes and talks to the doctor and she's like, he was in love with her and he still is. I don't think Mozart's gonna help him. And I was like, oh my God, I just want to say, I don't think Mozart is gonna help like about like work situations or something like that. It was just, and then she just like walks out of the room and the doctor just like shuts the door behind her and there's no like, what's the treatment plan gonna be then, or anything. It was just so like LOL doctors back in the day. So yeah, I really like that.
Steven, how about you?
Before I say something, Alicia, I did write down a cool quote from when they were talking about the sequoias, that they were always green and never living. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, considering that like her Madeline's color scheme was green and even Judy's were. So
green was definitely a super important color of this film.
But my favorite shot of the movie, I think it was when Madeline was near the Golden Gate Bridge and there was just like that shot of her when you could see her high heels and like the way that she was kind of standing. That really kind of stuck out to me. But overall, I really like Midge. I like those scenes that she had with Jimmy Stewart's character. I just really enjoyed those.
And I really like the score. I really like the weird design elements in the FX sequence by Saul Bass. I think he did that sequence. I know he did the design stuff. So that stuff is great. But my favorite thing in the movie is when she finally gets her hair done the way that he wants it and comes out of the bathroom after pinning it up, and she's in that green light, and she looks like a ghost, and then she comes out and then they do that one shot that spins around them and the setting changes, and I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they did that practically on set. I don't know if they did some sort of rear projection type of thing, but it's such a good shot. And just gets it like the whole movie right there in like 30 seconds or something. And I was trying to find out how they did it. I didn't dig like super hard. I didn't have that much time to look it up, but I was Googling and just couldn't come across anything yet. So I don't know. If somebody knows, I'd be curious. If anybody listening, I would definitely be curious to know how they did that. Because, they didn't have CGI as we talked about earlier. So, has this movie, as far as everyone's concerned, stood the test of time, or does it resonate today? Who wants to start us off?
I think it has stood the test of time, and I think it still resonates. I think it's a great movie, and I don't know if I'd say it's the best movie of all time. Maybe once we watch more of these movies, but I definitely liked it more than Citizen Kane, so I'm fine with it besting that movie.
It still resonates for me. Obviously, I really do love this movie, and I just remember the first time I saw it, I was just like blown away by it. And subsequent viewings, I always continue to be surprised by different things about it. And I do think there's some cheesiness and some campiness to it. But I kind of like that, and it doesn't bother me. And like I said at the beginning, I think just like the performances and I guess the score and everything that sort of goes into it, it just hangs together really well, even despite like those little things.
Stephen?
Yeah, I think it does stand the test of time. And, what Alicia says is true. Whenever you look at it, there's something else that you can find in that movie that you didn't see before. Even down to what they're all wearing. It's just like I found myself envying what Jimmy Stewart's character was wearing sometimes, just because it was just so classic. And just the way that like the dress was and the way that they kind of framed the shots, it just looked really beautiful. Of course, I saw the cleaned up version, I guess, that they had redone. So it just looks spectacular. And as far as the plot goes, it's something that you can revisit and find more things in. So I think it does stand the test of time. You can watch it anytime.
As the other person who liked the movie, I'll say that I do think it stands the test of time. I think a big part of why it does to me is that the whole thing is so heightened. Like that doesn't seem like any San Francisco that actually existed fully. Like that place Ernie's is like, does a place actually look like that? Or do lights work like this in the real world? No. Like so much of this seems like a dream. I think the thing I read from the book at the start of the show calls it a dreamscape version of San Francisco or something like that. I think that taking it out of a sense of total reality lets it be more timeless and still be effective today in a way that I think if it was too realistic in the way it was shot at the time, it might not have aged as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts. And Laura, as the relative naysayer, what do you think?
I think visually it was a beautiful film. Stylistically, it was really interesting. I think it was just kind of ridiculous. They fall in love for 3 days. He gets catatonic for a year. And he sees the same girl with just 3 shades darker hair, and it gets all weird, and she just goes with it. And then, yeah, but it's not my bag, baby.
I just want to say to that, I think that your response is the normal response by most people on first viewing. I think Mia is the odd one out. I think most people, when they see this movie for the first time, are like, okay, I like it, but I don't like everything about it, if they like it at all, or they're just like, what the fuck is this? I think that's pretty normal.
I just want to say that it's a beautiful thing how you explain me to our listeners as well as understand me.
I'm not saying that
every time. No, it's really nice. It could be a lot worse. It's very charitable.
Well, I'm not trying to be charitable. I'm trying to tell you, watch it more.
Watch it again. I you know what I really want to watch is Rear Fucking Window.
Love that movie.
Yeah.
I love
it. Is it on the list?
It's on Amazon Prime.
I thought it was on the list, but it's not. So, I mean,
watch
it on your own.
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch that movie.
You will not be sorry.
I would watch. I want to watch it too. It was like next up on Amazon. Like, all right.
It was a very next movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first Hitchcock movie I ever saw, and I saw it when I was like little, like under age 10. My mom would just show me whatever she was watching. She was like, "Yeah, I'm watching this. You're watching it too." So like, I saw that pretty young, and I think that like I think that the Hitchcock thing like imprinted on me or something, because I really like Hitchcock a lot.
One question real quick from what you read earlier. Sorry, I meant to bring this up sooner, but it describes Jimmy Stewart's character as like a wannabe necrophiliac or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
I think a necrophiliac is when you want to have sex with dead people, not just being people. Tons of people are in love with their deceased spouse or something like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I just want to raise a point of objection to
this is not necrophilia.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, maybe that is part of it, but I think being in love with someone who is dead is a normal thing for many people. So
sure. I thought they were kind of just, taking
reaching.
Liberty. Yeah.
This book is a little dramatic.
Where they were talking about
totally.
It's not a coincidence that her name was Madeline, the cookie for which you find comfort as a child. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, shut up.
I know. I read that online somewhere too.
Y'all shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Fine.
Laura, you have a bonus question for us, which unfortunately we didn't get a chance to put it into the Facebook group. Just wasn't working far enough in advance for this one. But anyway, do you want to ask us the question?
Well, I think we sort of broached it a little, the idea of doppelganger as a film trope. And does it ever work? And if so, what's the film that you would want to mention that you really enjoyed that in? And I know this film is sort of touching on that, not necessarily that, but in a way, all of them are. And you could there's all arguments when we talk about it, I think.
So was there something you were thinking of? I'm curious.
I was thinking of adaptation.
Yeah.
I thought that was a successful, but it's also kind of, is he really a twin? Is it in his mind? Does
Right.
he exist? Things like that. But I've never seen Body Double, so I'd like to see that. And I tried to watch this movie Moon with
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell. That's supposed to be a similar concept, but I got bored.
Right.
Well, you know me in space, so I won't be watching that one.
Alicia, what about you? Any doppelganger movies that
The
come to mind?
the only one that I could think of, because I think I've seen it a lot in like TV and like sci-fi TV shows or like soap operas, but I guess it always comes down to being like an evil twin or like a clone or something. It's
Mhm.
very rare that you really see like a doppelganger
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
But which I guess is like sort of the argument, but I do think that it can expand to include other things. And the only movie that I could really think of that I really and it's really not a doppelganger movie, but it's Mulholland Drive, where it's really just like kind of the same
I think you can make an
character.
Yeah.
In two different ways. But like I said, I really was struggling to find like one that would like strictly adhere to doppelganger. But I love Mulholland Drive. Like it creeps me the heck out every time I watch it. I love it.
Steven,
So
what
that's
about
mine.
you?
I would like to say I Know Who Killed Me, that movie with Lindsay Lohan. No, I'm kidding. With Lindsay Lohan.
I thought you would say
No.
The Parent Trap.
That was what
No,
popped into
well-
my head as soon as you said this.
Yeah, I
Hey,
think that the definition of what I guess a doppelganger is kind of up in the air as far as like, is it a duplicate or is it the version of yourself that's like the most pure version? And I remembered seeing Dave, and I thought that movie
Yeah.
sort of was like a
Oh,
doppelganger.
That's a
Yeah.
doppelganger movie for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it was like
Yeah.
the best qualities of what the person was,
Yeah.
in somebody else.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that I thought about that one, and that led me to think of The Great Dictator, which is also definitely a doppelganger movie to me, and plays on real life doppelgangers, Hitler and Chaplin.
Yeah, I think that's
True.
a really good example
And is
of
on
one.
the list, I think, right?
I don't think so. There's a couple
I don't
other
think
Chaplin.
so.
No?
There's
Okay.
3 other Chaplin movies, I think, but I don't think that one's on.
Okay.
I think a lot of action films took that as well as
Mhm.
like, I mean, from anything from Hitman to like Sherlock Holmes, there's always like that
Right.
element of someone getting
Mistaken.
reconstructive surgery, so they
Oh,
can
gotcha.
tend to be
Yeah.
the
We were talking about this face-off count, and you
Oh,
just
yeah,
reminded me
Face
of
Off.
Face Off.
because they're not
That
really
movie's good.
doppelgangers necessarily, but it kind of plays on it still. And I think most twin movies, or so many twin movies, do
Like
play on the
twins.
doppelganger thing because at first you think that they're, like twins. Like, because I do think that you can make an argument that that's playing on the doppelganger thing because it's like
it is,
twins, and then they're not so much. But anyway,
and that's why it's so great.
So for me, the movie I was going to say is Us, the horror movie from a couple years back, which I think is just such a good movie. Like I was kind of rereading the Wikipedia page about it today, and I was like, oh my God, I want to watch this movie again. Like, and I think I've already seen it 2 or 3 times, and I just think it's so
Wow.
good. I know. The second time was on an airplane, just to asterisk it a bit. I just think it's so scary. And Lupita Nyong'o is so freaking good in it. And just, I do not know how she played those two. I mean, I do. She's an Academy Award winning actor and stuff, but
she should have won again for that. But
she should
wasn't
have.
even nominated.
I know. Yeah, I know.
It didn't get
I don't think it got any
The reception.
Oscar nominations.
I don't
No,
remember.
people weren't really into it.
No. Well, the Academy wasn't really into it.
I haven't seen it,
It's
actually.
so-
I haven't either.
Oh my God. Guys, have you seen it, Alicia?
No, not yet. I know the concept, but I
Okay.
haven't seen it.
Don't watch
I-
it tonight because it's too scary to watch at night. But like next weekend.
Who are you
during-
talking to?
It's scary. No, the
I
last
get
time
scared.
I
Thank
watched,
you.
yeah, I watched it
Oh
on
my
a plane. It was actually March 2020, and I was flying back from New York back to Austin. And the movie is, about a lot of things, but is about a terrifying home invasion, which has like always been one of my bigger fears. And then I was back at our apartment at night, and we had this huge window up in the front, and Jeremiah went out to like walk the dog or something. And then when he came back, he banged on the window really scary, like he was going to break it. And it was awful. So it's too scary for me to watch at night, but Alicia,
Sorry.
maybe you. But anyways, it's so good. Like the acting is great. The soundtrack is great. It's such a good movie. I highly, highly recommend it. So yeah, and has
Cool.
excellent doppelgangers in it.
Yeah. I'll also throw out The Prestige.
Oh yeah.
Good
So
answer.
our next episode is Alicia's third pick. So Alicia, do you want to tell us what that is?
Oh yes, it's Lawrence of Arabia, starring Peter O'Toole, from 1962, directed by David Lean. Available to rent on Amazon, Google, Apple, etc.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that one is available with the subscription anywhere right now. So you
Oh.
gotta pay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that.
How
I'll
dare
pay
you.
for some O'Toole.
Yeah, right.
Omar Sharif's in it too.
Mm.
Oh,
So,
hey.
you know.
Okay.
That man.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
We never talked about the dream sequence.
Oh, the one
Yeah.
where he
Yeah.
has the same dream that she always talks about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
mentioned
was just
it in
like-
passing, but
Yeah, we never really did a deep dive into it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It was just like something that we never really, because
Save
it was
it.
just like, it was jarring for me with the first time I saw it, I think.
right.
Save it for
And,
when
yeah.
we do our like, what did we
Okay.
forget to talk about? Write it
Oh,
down.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Write it down.
So that's it for this episode of the Stereoactive Movie Club. We invite you to join us in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Stereoactive Movie Club. You can also email us at stereoactivemovieclub@gmail.com, or you can send us a voice message on our show page at anchor.fm/Stereoactive Movie Club. Thank you. Goodbye.
That's too fast.
Vertigo.
This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.